friends, it's your girl Harpo. Welcome to this episode of Brown Girl Guilt. We have another installment of Ask Harpo Didi. Ask Harpo Didi is an anonymous submission form where you, the community, submits questions for me, Harpo Didi. I answer these questions based on my insight and the experiences that I've had. This is not professional help or advice, and please take what resonates, leave what does not. If you would like to submit a question, you can head over to my Instagram at HarpoDD and look for the anonymous submission form that's linked in my bio. Today's Ask Harpo Didi installment has two questions, and both of the questions have been chosen because they reflect a similar theme. When I read both of these questions, they reflect back to me this period of uncertainty, this transition period into unknown territory, and not necessarily having the confidence to move into this new space that is required of us. And there's a lot of growing pains that are evident in these two questions. So, what I'll do is I will read out each of the questions, speak to the individual questions, and then come back and tie a really neat little bow at the end of the episode. So, the first question here is from someone who is a stay at home mom, and she's sort of seeking advice on how to get back out there. So, here's what they've described as what they're moving through. I'm a stay at home mom, and in some ways, it's made my anxiety worse. It's tough to push myself out of my comfort zone and into a new, unfamiliar situation. I have enjoyed being a stay at home mom, but will be going back to school this fall. I'm so afraid of failure and letting myself and my family down. I'm trying to shift my mindset to a can do attitude, but the anxious feelings still linger. Their question is, what are some things that you do to push yourself out of your comfort zone? How and where do you find the confidence while struggling with anxious feelings to navigate through those difficult situations? Well, first and foremost, I'm not a single mom. Not a single mom, sorry. First and foremost, I'm not a mom, and I'm not a stay at home mom either. So I can't probably speak to the specific nuanced experience of being a stay at home mom and then sort of journeying out into the world. But what I can speak to and what I have resonance with is this fear of failure, this idea of letting yourself and people in your life down, and the anxiety that comes with having to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Here's what I would say to you. I would say that anything that requires us to do something different, anything that requires us to change our actions, change the way that we have been for whether it's a short term or a long term, all of those things require a lot of courage and they require a lot of change and bravery. And those are not things that are readily taught to us as people. We don't just come into this world programmed with courage and bravery and the ability to traverse new terrain. We just don't come into the world with that. It's something that we have to actually practice and we have to show up for often. And it's a muscle that we have to build the same way that you would go to a gym and you would pick up weights, or the same way that you would, you know, practice a new skill. This is a muscle that needs to be built. So I would say that have compassion for yourself first and foremost. The anxiety is really real and the fear is really real. And then what I would ask you to do is get curious about what that failure actually is. Because quite often, when we're in this feeling of fear, when we're feeling, like I'm afraid of X or I'm afraid of Y, it's because we're afraid of what failure will actually mean for us. So I'll tell you a little story. I started a job back in 2020, right out of my master's degree. And at the time, I was pretty excited for this job. I said yes to this job without really interviewing for any others. I was just so certain that this job was going to work out for me. And 6 months into the job, I realized I needed to leave. It was a job that wasn't serving me. I just needed a change. I wanted something that was a bit more aligned. And though I was grateful for all the experiences and the lessons that I had learned during the first 6 months at this job, I knew that I needed to go out and do something different. And I think it took me weeks to even come to that realization with myself. It took me so long to even admit to myself that I didn't want to do this anymore. And what I was really paralyzed by, what I was really, stuck in was fear. I was so afraid that, admitting that I needed to leave or admitting that I wanted change would would come as a surprise and a shock to people. And I was really afraid of letting myself down. I was like, well, you know, I have to do something different. I have to do something new. And then I was also really afraid of letting people down. I was afraid of letting my family down because for the first time I was doing an adult job. And so I was also experiencing a lot of anxiousness because it required action, right? So I had to make a decision. I had to do something different. And so I was quite paralyzed by fear because I was just so afraid of what change was going to mean. And it sounds like what you're experiencing right now is also a level of uncertainty, right? You don't know what life is going to be like when you're not a stay-at-home mom, what life will be like when your routine is changed up, whether you're going to be able to handle what it means to be your whole self and a mom, and probably to uphold a lot of the other responsibilities that you have as a stay-at-home mom. Like you're probably the primary caregiver for a lot of people in the house. And so maybe there's the fear around being good enough to handle all the different things, right? All the different challenges that are going to arise. All of that is very real. And so, what I would ask you again to do is, I would implore you to get really curious about what the actual thing that you're fearful of is. So when we say we're afraid of failure, I mean, quite often we can have a different take on failure as well, right? We can think, okay, I can fail, and that's okay, I can try again. That can be one way to approach failure. The other way to approach failure is to think, if I fail, it means this about me, or it means that about me. It means I'm not good enough. It might mean that I'm not perfect. It might mean that people see me as less than. I don't know about you, but I have created an identity around being perfect and being able to do it all. I've created an identity around being able to just handle everything. And so any sign of failure is very detrimental to this feeling of this understanding of perfection that I've created for myself. And so that's usually what prevents me from stepping out into this unknown, uncertain territory, because what I know and what I'm certain of is so comfortable. It's so predictable. I can do it again and again, and it'll reinforce this understanding that I have of myself that I can do it all. And so, actually, in your description, you also say that you're trying to shift your mindset to a can do attitude. I actually think that somewhere deep down, you already have a can do attitude, right? But the anxious feelings are just doubt. And doubt always arises when we're about to embark on something that is new, something that is uncertain. So just becoming very aware of uncertainty. And I will say to you also, just going back to my example, I did eventually make the decision to leave that job. And I did eventually open myself up to this like very uncertain space. I quit the job without really having another job lined up. I didn't really know what direction I was going to go into. But that uncertainty, that like open space that came out of doing something different, doing something new, making a decision that was really scary and paralyzing and just terrifying, the uncertainty actually ushered in this chapter of my life. And I don't know if you've heard about this concept called liminal space. So, liminal space is the in between. And quite often, as human beings, we can find ourselves in liminal spaces. So, when you're in a liminal space, it means that the past that you are so used to is starting to crumble. It's starting to change. It doesn't really work for you anymore. I mean, this idea that you're going back out there and not becoming a stay-at-home mom, coming out of your comfort zone, is probably because you want something different, you want something new, right? So in a liminal space, this past, this like previous life doesn't actually exist in the same way anymore. It's like crumbling. And then also in this liminal space, this new thing, this like new this new hill that you're embarking on, or this like next step that you're taking, actually hasn't arrived yet. So liminal space means that you're sort of stuck in this limbo where you're like, okay, I can't put my foot on the past, I can't put my foot on the future, what can I do? And so all you can actually do in a liminal space is just float. That's the only thing that you can do in a liminal space. Now, when it comes to like, how do I push myself outside of my comfort zone and how do I find the confidence when I am struggling with anxious feelings? I actually look for evidence of all the times that I have been able to push through my comfort zone and I have been able to be successful out of a place of uncertainty. So anytime that I was fearful, anytime that I was embarking on something new, I actually look for evidence of that in the past to show myself, to prove to myself that I am capable. I've done it before. This is not anything new. I mean, I'm just going to say, like, the obvious for me is that you're a mom, and before being a mom, you were not a mom, right? So, like, you had no idea what it meant to be a mom. You had no idea what it meant to actually give birth. Like, we can imagine these things, but until you actually go through it, you actually can't really speak to the actual experience itself, right? So what I would say to you is that, like, that there's evidence right in front of you that you have been able to, and you are actually very good at navigating experiences and like circumstances that you have not traveled before. So I would just look for evidence for all the times. And then I would also look for something that scared you, but you did anyway, right? So what was scary, but you did anyway. So that's what I would say to you. So now I want to move on to the next question. I hope that was helpful for the listener and helpful for all other folks who are tuned in and perhaps going through a period of uncertainty as well. So, this next question comes from a 31-year-old woman who is navigating some changes in her personal relationship. So, when asked to describe what this person is moving through, they said, "I'm a 31-year-old woman. I've been with the same person for 7 years. Lately, I've been feeling that this person is not my person. We are different, and more I see the incompatibility. I'm scared to start over. I'm also scared of being with a person who I cannot see starting a family with, but also scared of starting over. We are not married, but we do own a property together, which makes this even harder." The question is, I don't know the question. I just know. No, the question is, I don't know the question, just not sure what to do and how to move forward. Yeah, I mean, like, all of this can feel so confusing. All of this can feel so, like, just disconnecting, right? Like when you start to feel in a way that is so counter or different than how you have felt in the past. I mean, change is scary, right? Change is super super scary, and to think that you might want something different than what you wanted can be really difficult. And quite often, I feel that it's really hard for me to admit that I want something different because it feels like such a betrayal to this previous version of me who actually made the decision, right? So, like, if I was in your place, I'd be like, "Oh, but like 7 years ago I decided I wanted to like be with this person, and I wanted to like marry them, and I've committed to them, and I've invested all this time, and it just feels like I've just wasted time, and also like a betrayal of this person, right?" And I think what also comes up for me as I'm reading your description here and your predicament is like this like feeling of like, can I trust myself? Like, can I trust that what my intuition is saying is actually real? Am I like confused? Am I going through like a crisis? Like, those are the things that I would ask myself. And the reason I'll tell you this is because right now I'm navigating like losing a lot of relationships. So I'm in a space where a lot of the relationships that have been in my life, my entire life, so I'm 27. So navigating relationships that have been in my life for 27 years, I'm just realizing that like I really actually don't want those relationships in my life, and I'm at this really important junction or juncture, whatever that is. I'm at this like really important juncture of my life where I have to make a decision that will either keep me doing the exact same thing or will open me up to change, will open me up to this brand new space that, much like the last question, will open me up to uncertainty, will open me up to this level of newness that I don't know if I'm ready to experience or navigate, right? So I think that like it's totally normal for you to be experiencing fear, confusion, and this like lack of stability. Like I read this and it just, I would feel really ungrounded if I was to be in this predicament. So I think what's really difficult to do when you have been with somebody or you've been in relation or communion with somebody is uncoupling your life from them. And that uncoupling can also feel really scary. It can feel really daunting. You know, it might be something that you're like, do I even want to take this on? Because uncoupling yourself or like like, what's the word? Like unknotting yourself from relationships that have become so commonplace in our life can be a lot of hard work, and they can take a lot of effort, and they can really make us uncomfortable. They put us in a discomfort zone. And so what I would say to you is that um, your commitment to yourself and what you really want from your life, what you want to see come out of your interactions and your relationships, that commitment has to be greater than your discomfort. So it has to be greater than what you're used to, whatever you've grown comfortable in. And even this idea of like we own a property together, which makes this a hard decision, we convince ourselves of reasons to stay. We convince ourselves of reasons to keep the status quo all the time. The excuses are abundant when it comes to making a decision that is really good for us, right? So, what I would say to you is that there are probably at least 5 ways. I mean, we'd have to research this, right? But there are probably at least 5 ways that you can navigate the owning of the property together. I know people in my life who have been able to do that. I will also say, like, there are people who are married, right? And they share like children, and they share multiple properties, and they share businesses, and they share assets, and they have figured it out, right? They have figured out a way to end their relationship and to move on and to coexist, to co parent. People have figured it out. So I think if your concern is like, how am I going to navigate uncoupling these like various tied knots, I think I would trust you. I would trust yourself to figure it out. Um, the other really important thing in the context is that you do not see yourself having a family with this person, and you do not see yourself having children with this person, but you're also fearful of starting over. Now, here's the thing. If you were to end this relationship and then you were to go on and try and date and try and start over again, and you were to not find anybody, you would probably still be in the same position that you're in right now, not wanting to start a family and not wanting to have children with someone that doesn't feel right. Do you see that? So like right now you don't want to have children with this person. You don't want to commit to a higher level of investment with this person. And if you were to start over again and you didn't find a person that you could do that with, you'd actually be in the exact same place. Now, your chances of finding somebody that you could experience a deeper level of intimacy with, you could see a family with, you could have children with, are probably 50% higher if you were out of this relationship, because you would actually be meeting new people that would be able to offer that kind of commitment to you, would be able to offer that probably like that possibility to you. So, like right now, where you are, you're actually kind of just circling the drain a little bit, right? Because you're sort of in this place of non decision. And something that I learned a little while ago is that no decision is actually also a decision. So, by you not making any decision, and I'm not saying it's to leave this person, maybe it's to have a really open conversation with this person. Maybe it's to ask them about, what their feelings are. Maybe it's to chat with them about this incompatibility that you're noticing. Maybe it's that, right? But staying paralyzed, being stuck by fear, staying in this, again, this liminal space where the past is not the same anymore, the future is really uncertain and hasn't showed up yet. Being in this liminal space, sometimes, yes, we do need to hang out in limbo, but sometimes we also need to take that limbo and use it and like alchemize it, turn it from copper to gold. That's what we also need to do sometimes in liminal spaces. You can't know that unless you practice discernment, right? I think right now you're in a place of like lots of discomfort. So actually, that discomfort is such a strong indication that something needs to change, whether that is leaving the relationship or it's actually questioning the relationship with the other person that's involved. I will also say that there is an entire line of work called conscious uncoupling. So you could Google it, conscious uncoupling. I know people who have used conscious uncoupling as a framework, as a system. There's a book on conscious uncoupling, and it's just basically how to undo your relationships with people consciously. It was actually popularized by Gwyneth Paltrow. She's this actress out in Hollywood, and she was married to Chris Martin, who is the like the front band member of Coldplay. and they have children together, they had ventures together, they had like businesses, they had all these things. And so they decided to split up and remain sort of amicable because they both still had like a lot of respect and love for each other, and they have children together. So Gwyneth Paltrow used to talk a lot about how she was consciously uncoupling from her ex-husband Chris Martin. And so I would say like conscious uncoupling again, right? Like we sometimes we think like I'm the only one, or I don't know, like I don't know like how I would navigate this. Chances are that somebody out there has already experienced it and has turned it into like levels of support as resources for people. So maybe that's something you could also look into. Your question is like, I just don't know what to do and how to move forward. I think I would, if I was you, or if you were like, you're asking me, like, what should I do, Harpo? Harpo Didi, tell me what to do. I would just tune in. I would just sit with myself and ask myself, just my body, my belly. I would ask my intuition, like, you already know what you want. You already know what I should do. So just tell me what to do. And you know what I do? I actually pray a lot. I speak to God a lot. I don't know if this is part of your practice, but whatever it is that you feel connected to, whatever you have faith in, I just lean into that and I just say, okay, like I've had so many moments in my life. I mean, even right now, my eyes are closed. I'm so tuned into my body. I'm sitting here as if I were you, 31-year-old female, same person 7 years. I would just say, like, you know what, like this is what I'm feeling, and this is what I want to do, but I'm so afraid to do it. I'm just so afraid to do it. And if I was to do it, can you promise me that you'd be there for me? Can you promise that you'll be there along with me the entire way, and just hold my hand and have your hand on my back? Can you just make sure that you're there with me as I move through this really difficult time? And you know what? Even if I'm not the 31-year-old female, even if I'm the stay at home mom who's now traveling into a new space and starting school this fall, if you were to just close your eyes and just turn your attention inward and just pay attention to your body, and if you were to just ask yourself, like, what am I feeling? And then you were to just open it up and then you would start feeling what you're feeling. Could you just trust that what your body is saying is right? What your body is telling you, not your mind, but your body. Like if your body is saying, I got you, don't worry, I know this is scary, but you can do it. I'm going to be there with you. Can you lean into that? Can you trust that? Can you really honor what this part of your body is saying to you? We ignore our intuition all the time. We let our minds win. We always let our minds win. Something that I started doing 2 months ago was meditating for 15 minutes every morning. And it doesn't have to be as fancy as it sounds or as fancy as people make it. All we have to do is we just have to sit down. Maybe it's for 5 minutes. We just start paying attention to your mind and how the thoughts are showing up, and then just letting them go, letting them pop like bubbles in the sky, letting them pass like clouds in the sky. Just really letting those thoughts go and trying to step more and more into our body. I actually have a meditation that's a Brown Girl Guilt episode. It's called Into Your Body Meditation. It's a guided meditation. Practice that. Practice becoming intimately connected with your body during these turbulent times of transitions, these turbulent times of needing to make decisions. I also wrote a Substack recently, and it's called How to Make Meaningful Change. And what I talk about is this commitment to ourselves being stronger and bigger than our attachment to what we think is comfortable. I would encourage you to go and read that Substack. It's also linked in my Instagram at Harpo Didi. If you go, you can find it in the link in bio. And I would just just really try and start to trust what your body is telling you. Your body will give you the deepest wisdom more than anybody else could, more than even I could. I mean, everything that I just said might not even be real and true for you, but what will be real and true for you is that thing that your body says to you. Thanks for submitting your questions. Thanks for being vulnerable. And also, for those of you who are listening, thank you for listening. I hope you were able to find resonance in this episode as you journey through your own turbulence that comes with navigating transitions. And so, to recap, I would say that our commitment to ourselves must be stronger than our attachments to the things that are comfortable. Quite often, fear is present because fear and failure will mean something about ourselves. Like failure will mean something about ourselves. Liminal spaces are incredibly difficult to navigate. And the strongest wisdom exists right here in our bodies.